This is the Newsload.
So, an uncomfortable topic that I don't really like talking about very much, but I think it's important to talk about, is the homelessness in town. What are we doing to improve and help those people?
So, I always start this conversation out with anybody by saying we have got to stop treating this as one monolithic problem, because it's not. And in fact, in a lot of cases, the homelessness itself is only a symptom. It's not the root problem. The root problem is the mental health and addictions that people are struggling with in the community. And those, quite frankly, are something that the city can't fix. The city does not do healthcare. That's a provincial responsibility. And we would actually bankrupt the city very quickly, like within the matter of a few months, if we tried to backfill provincial responsibilities on healthcare. We run our city on property taxes. We don't get any share of income tax. We don't get any share of sales taxes. It's property taxes, and those are the least fair tax we have because they don't take into account people's ability to pay. You know, your income is based on how much you make, so your income tax is your income tax. Your consumer taxes are based on how much you spend. So you can choose to delay that, that new television or that new couch or whatever, if you're in a position where, well, now's not the time. So you can save on your taxes by your own choices that way. Property taxes, you can't. They're based on an assessment of the piece of property you own, and it doesn't matter how much you make. It doesn't matter what you paid for the home when you lived there or when you purchased it. It's about what it's assessed at now and the rate that it costs us to provide your services. What the city's really good at, though, is the housing piece itself.
Yeah, like
that's where we can make
portables by the fair, right? Do we have the portables?
So while we
coming back?
can't fix mental health and addictions, we can certainly address some of the housing problems.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the remote or the temporary shelters, we have community agencies now that are using some of those. So the city's not going to lead this ourselves this year. We have agencies, a number of housing agencies. In fact, ATLOSA, which is an Indigenous organization,
Wonderful.
is leading the Indigenous location. So we've got different groups that are each taking a piece and saying, we will look after 30 people at this site and we will look after 50 people at this site. And so we're sharing it around with other community partners. We have built ourselves, for the first time in 50 years, the city has, through, and credit where it's due, the federal government helped pay for through the Rapid Housing Initiative. There's a new 60-plus unit apartment building on Baseline Road that is open and now occupied by residents, which is
So all
affordable units. We have another one under construction on Thompson Road that's almost finished, that's waiting, just for the final few things before we can start moving people in there. We've got another one in the works on Elm Street where we purchased a surplus school property and we're demolishing the school and replacing it with housing.
Excellent.
So the city's doing these particular projects through our housing, our geared to income social housing agency. We are, for the first time in 50 years, building new geared to income units. Southdale Road was actually approved by council last night. So that's going to be a net 90 new geared to income units, as well as a net 167 new units. So there's going to be a mix of affordable housing, which is like 80% of the market rate sort of level. But then there's also going to be those new geared to income units, which can be as low as $300
Amazing.
For some folks.
Good.
So,
Good.
We're building 3 new apartment buildings there.
Will that take 3 years?
Well, yes, and I mean, that's the thing. The city doesn't
what about
not
now?
have a magic vehicle that can roll down the street and shoot out apartment buildings. I wish we did, because I mean, that creates a funny cartoon.
Buildings that we can just put people in.
But you know
them
what?
for
We don't own
temporary.
those. Those are private owners, and if they don't want to let them be used for that, they don't have to. And a lot of them would not be suitable anyway, because in some cases they've been vacant so long. There's water damage and mold and stuff in some of these buildings. They're not up to
unsafe.
code. That's not safe for people. Buildings that were built for commercial use really aren't set up for residential use. I mean, you think about how much water, an old storefront might have used, right? Maybe one washroom for employees. But you can't put 50 people in there with one washroom. So a lot of those just aren't suitable. And in the short term, the answer is there isn't an easy answer. The problem didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to get fixed overnight. The problem really started, I would argue, when the province closed the psychiatric hospital.
Yep.
And community service ended for people, and institutional service ended for people who needed that structure.
Yes.
And that support.
Yes.
The people making sure they were getting their medications every day, and getting a hot meal every day, and having a
people
shower
look
every day.
over them
Yep.
and support them, and hey Rick, how you doing today?
Yep.
Kind of thing, you know?
So without the province stepping up to replace that gap, it is going to be a long, slow climb out of this hole. And I know that that's not the answer people want to hear, but it's the honest answer.
Well, at least it's honest. I have a girlfriend that I will not mention her name, but she's living in a domestic violence situation, and she would like to leave. And she's called Inova, and she's on a 6-month waiting list.
Yep.
And he could kill her next month. So how can we improve that? You know, a 6-month waiting list is not safe.
And even with, and we're putting another, well, it's recommended, we have to pass the budget still in January, but, our staff are recommending another $1.8 million going into housing services in this budget cycle coming up. And a chunk of that is going to be used for our head lease and our rent supplement program. So those who are in a situation like your friend, who might not be able to afford a place on their own or can't find a place on their own, in the head lease program, the city will co-sign for them.
Okay. And can she
back
do
them
that
up.
now?
She would have to get on the list at the city to start that process. But we have a list where we help match people to housing that is available. When we increase the budget in the new year, there'll be more funding for those head lease and rent supplements. So, maybe she can only afford, say, $700 a month, but if she got a top up of $150, she could afford that $850 apartment.
Because she has 2 kids, you know?
Yeah. So we are working on those things, and we are putting money into it. But, like I said, we could put the entire city budget into this, and it still wouldn't cover the problem that we have from the province not filling those gaps in healthcare and addictions. And so we have a lot of people who we've had housed who can't keep their housing because those wraparound services aren't there. Those counselors, those nurses, those people, like you said, that can check in on them and see how they're doing and make sure that they're staying on course. Without those folks, a lot of people just end up back out on the street.
The most beautiful, most interesting person on the planet, my idol, Robin Williams. But if you're not getting proper care, if you're not, have a proper support system, you're freezing on the street and possibly addicted to drugs and possibly sick.
Yep. Well, and like I said at the start, homelessness is often a symptom of a different problem. It's not the root cause. There are people who genuinely just need a hand up, and that's where those rent supplements and head lease programs come in, because we can get them housed and they can stay housed themselves. But those aren't everybody who's homeless. There are people with some much deeper seated issues that housing alone is not going to address. If we're setting up false expectations, we're setting up everybody to fail.
Agreed. And, as a village leader, if you will, London isn't exactly a village anymore.
Getting very close to 500,000 people.
That's insane. I'm from Lucan, right? So, even just having a shopping mall is a big deal, but then there's everything else that happens when a collection of people are in one space.
Yep.
This is the Newsload.